one thing that it's not necessarily a major plot point or anything, but and just given how realistically this creator writes, which is kind of the core, the best part of the story, one thing that is going to happen is that there's going to be at least a background story arc going on where the Defense Force has to majorly change how it operates. Because it appears to me that up to this point, the entire anti-kaiju operation has been that of a, what do you call it? Natural disaster, where they essentially keep no secrets. Everything is out in the open. They desperately want people to the population to pay attention to what they're doing.
Yeah,
and
the
they
force is
just
very reactionary,
hose out
isn't it?
all the information they have because it's a matter of public health and safety. That's what I was looking for. And that's the kind of government agency that I've worked for most of my career, like National Park Service, constant education efforts. You just blast the information out there because they have definitely been looking at this as a public health and safety issue. But now, from what we saw around that council, we have a pretty good idea of what the Defense Force knew. So they clearly did not know that they were dealing with intelligent beings up to this point. They were essentially more of a National Park Service, just with a military spirit.
Very reactionary to the threats.
Not military habits, because they immediately announced when Kaiju number 8 and Kaiju number 9 showed up. They just broadcast that information out there wholesale. There's going to have to be, now that they understand that they are in a war, not a metaphorical war, a literal war, with intelligent operatives on the other side who are actively attempting sabotage of the human race, that is going to have to change. So they're going to have to keep secrets now. They're going to have spies. They're going to have to lock down the information that they send out to the public. And that is going to be a major shift in mentality in a bureaucracy, which is always incredibly painful, slow, and awkward and inefficient. But added to that, there was that one comment during the initial boardroom scene, that other country that's been experimenting with kaiju to human tissue transplants, which could be as simple and benign as figuring out how to use the kaiju regeneration to regrow pancreases to cure diabetes, all the way up to creating half kaiju super soldiers.
Yeah.
And almost certainly there have been other nations working on the medical applications of the kaiju regeneration. I mean, if you could cure diabetes, that would be diabetes, heart disease, just these things would be massive advances in medicine.
Sure.
And but the thing is, these creators are the story's so tight. I don't think that no one line is wasted in here. So I really think that we're going to see that's going to not come back to bite us, come back to interact with the main story. So I just had this thought, not really based on any evidence, but I'm getting a strong impression that some other country has been communicating with whatever intelligence is causing the kaiju to upgrade from natural disaster to wartime opponent. And I think we're going to see that in the future. But again, I don't have any real evidence for this. It's just that one line plus the clear knowledge that they're going to have to make that shift from natural disaster to wartime operation.
I don't want to rush anyone. I've got to go in like 2 minutes, but before I go, I just have to say, so going from that, I think you're right. Like, there's definitely going to be some changes because we've seen that the Force now wants to start implementing a new kind of, I don't know whether they use the word task team, but that we know that they want to bring together the rookies from all the different divisions to create, like, to give them special training. So they're obviously making plays now. I think they're starting to look to the future. I think they want to probably move from being completely reactionary to a bit more proactive in how they're tackling kaiju.
Yeah, I mean, totally.
Yeah. So going back to the national park metaphor, we have every park has its own employees, but we also have each region has a rapid response team that are not dedicated to any one park, and they just go around reacting to plant invasions that crop up as needed. And they have all the fancy tech, and they literally like ride around on four-wheelers with mounted pesticide guns. And I've worked with them some, and
That's
they're
crazy.
a fun bunch. But it's a bunch of young hotshots drawn from every park who go around as a rapid response team. So
To my knowledge, we have nothing like that here.
yeah, but the UK has a lot less land.
Yeah,
And so
we're
in
tiny.
the US, we're simply
But-
overwhelmed by the raw surface area we have to take care of. So it leads to some real different
makes sense.
infrastructure.
Makes sense.
But yeah, so you're definitely right. They're definitely switching to that rapid response team mentality.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I really don't want to, but I'm gonna have to go. I've got
Gotta make dinner for the kids.
I do, unfortunately. Yeah, it's 6 p.m. for me now, so I've got to get their dinner ready before their bedtime. Ah.
All
Okay.
But feel free to
you'll
continue talking, you two.
Yep.
And then, yeah, hopefully I'll be able to catch up with you guys soon for another chat.
What's for dinner?
I have no idea. That's the problem.
Ah,
I have to
Can't go
go
wrong
figure
with
that
mac and
out.
cheese.
yeah, buddy.
Yeah, that could work. I'll go figure that out.
All
You
right.
have a great evening.
Love you
Catch
and
you
leave
later,
you.
Grim.
Talk to you later, guys. Bye.
Bye.
Okay. So Dan.
Hello.
Okay, so I've been kind of monopolizing the direction of this just because I started out with a couple ideas I really wanted to ask. So do you have any just random thoughts that you haven't covered in any of your videos and Grim and I haven't addressed or anything?
Honestly, you guys have it's pretty wild how most of us kind of skate on the same wavelength, whether it's you bringing a total like scientific approach to this, and like from my point of view, I've just been looking at it like, what can I decipher really from what I've known in the past to what I know in the future? Kind of like, can I see things coming? Essentially, that's
that's
what
why I
try to
really
draw
like
on
our
the
little
most.
group, because you're the storyteller,
Yeah.
Grim's the engineer, and I'm kind of the biologist, and I think we've got a really good dynamic going there.
Yeah, so it's like I'm just trying to find it, and like you guys definitely skated on the same wavelength that I am on as well. And I would just say that the only thing that I'm probably gonna do for my next video is compare Kafka to a symbiote from Spider-Man, because that's definitely something that I could see happening in the near future, because I really do think that there was probably just a guy that hated humanity because something happened to him with the kaiju, and as he took like a kaiju for himself and turned into a kaiju and became the thing that he hated the most. I feel like that's like a big like those deals with the devil are always kind of like a thing that happened in shonen and stuff like that, where the main antagonist does something, and we have yet to get the main antagonist of the series to rear their head. There's only been Kaiju number 9, and we're 38 chapters into this, and we still don't know the main, like, who's gonna be the main bad guy for the series, because a lot of titles don't really get to introducing their main bad guy for the entire series until I would say maybe around like chapter 60, chapter 70.
I don't want to contradict that statement. I get what you're saying, and I do agree. But I think you're approaching it from a standard shonen creator perspective, and Noya is not the standard shonen creator. The quality is higher, and when you get a quality higher, you get more nuance. And I've got a video coming out on this, but I think from our perspective, with Kafka as the main character, I think number 9 is ultimately going to be the big bad guy of the series.
Okay.
Not that he is absolutely not that he is the highest kaiju in the hierarchy that he is a part of, which is I think what you're saying. He's not the king kaiju. He's slightly more important than a foot soldier, but not the lowest. But I definitely get what you're saying. He's not the top monkey on this tree. But I think that from the perspective of this story, I don't think this is going to be a simple linear fight the smaller bosses till you get to the giant boss story focused. I believe that's going to happen, but that's going to be background.
I feel like that's definitely true, because it's shonen plus, because it's not going to have like a long drawn out story. This story will end eventually.
I think that story arc is going to be going on as the Defense Force itself has to confront higher and higher tiers of the Kaiju, and send in an attack team to take out the big boss eventually.
Yeah, exactly.
But the story we're looking at is not that story, I believe. We're looking at the story of Kafka and how he interacts with the community around him. You've got because it started with the childhood promise, but it's become clear that that's not the main arc of the story. You have his rivalry with the vice captain, and that's not the main arc. You have his relationship with Reno and Kikoru, but that's not the main arc. This is a very realistically written story. We're not focused in on one simplistic trope arc here. We have been invited to participate in the lives of these people, and they're complex and messy, and there's not a clear linear story progression here. And so I think looking at it from the perspective of we've been invited to experience Kafka Haibano's life as he deals with everything around him, I really think that Kaiju number 9 is the ultimate big bag of Kafka's story. And I think that because compare Kaiju number 8 and Kaiju number 9, they are doppelgangers of each other. They're both super powerful humanoid kaiju, but if you just look at the art, the visuals, Kaiju number 8 is a jet black body with glowing blue light. And Kaiju number 9 is a pasty white death-like body, a pasty white fungal type body with dark black lines running through it. And Kaiju number 8 has these beautiful, big, developed, glowing eyes. Kaiju number 9 has these dark, black, beady, rudimentary eyes. Kaiju number 8 was born into this world, had to struggle from the very beginning, but immediately started helping people. Kaiju number 9 stepped into this world essentially fully formed and immediately began hurting people. You have all of these weird parallels. They're very similar, but they have chosen to be completely opposite. And so they're very, very contrasting. So I think that Kaiju number 9 is going to serve as a continuous foil for the entire series. When he first showed up, I thought he was just going to be the first boss to be defeated before we move on to the next big boss, classic shonen. But as I study him and how he's reacting and his relationship, and Kaiju number 9's interactions with Reno versus Kaiju number 8's interactions with Reno, and I really think Kaiju number 9 is going to stick it out to the end and ultimately be the main representation of the bad guys from Kafka's perspective.
We'll see.
And like I said, I get what you say. Yeah, he's definitely not the top monkey on his tree, but he is the one that our protagonist is going to be concerned with.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well, I still think that he's like the first main bad guy that they're gonna deal with for this arc.
Do you think he's going to be taken care of soon, or will he last out the series, do you think?
I don't know about that. I would say that he probably would make it. He is gonna come back. So this is the third. They fought once, and Kafka, kind of won. They fought. No, actually, yeah, they fought the second time, and
the first time he instigated.
Actually, he instigated.
Instigated it.
So I would say this is the third time that they're incurring one another. So I think it's like the third time is like, okay, now it's time for them to fight and see who's actually going to be the stronger one. Because I think the first time that he encountered him, he would have absolutely been destroyed. So he had to molt, or he had to shed.
Put a few more nouns in that. Which he are you referring to? Could you redo that sentence?
Kaiju number 6, Kaiju number 8, Kaiju number 9 needed to molt to fight Kaiju number 8, or else he would have just been beaten. So this third fight that's coming between 8 and 9 should technically be the definitive fight to see who wins in the end.
Okay, did he? Because when Kaiju number 8 encountered Kaiju number 9, first off, Kaiju number 8 had the complete drop on him. Kaiju number 8 knew Kaiju number 9 existed, understood it, and had a good understanding of his fighting style. So Kaiju number 8 went in with a massive amount of both intellectual and physical advantages because Kaiju number 9 had been hit with repeated freeze and conductive rounds. And Kaiju number 9 stated that he was having trouble regenerating, so he clearly wasn't at 100%.
Yeah, so he had to
Yeah.
go and molt anyway to fight against him, and that's what the third fight is supposed to be. It's supposed to be him on the level of possibly Kafka. So that's why I feel like it'd be more definitive, because now he's finally up to where he would be, you know?
Yeah. So one thing that I think is really going to lead to a more major story arc than it has already. Kaiju number 9 instantly analyzed Kaiju number 8 in that initial fight. And when he went to escape, he knew the best way to escape was to turn his finger guns on just some random Defense Force members to force Kaiju number 8 to defend them. That's a pretty cunning.
Yeah, that's why he said he knew his profile. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why he said he didn't analyze him. He said he knows his profile. So like his profile is that he protects other people. He will sacrifice himself to protect other people. So the easiest way, the Kaiju learn to adapt and fight from other people's weaknesses. So they know that if you go at Kaiju number 8 straight up, he's going to win the fight. But if you start attacking the people around him, spread him thin, you get him in between the ribs, so to speak, you can bring him down. So like that's like him saying like I know your profile is being like I know what kind of person you are. That's what I took away from that. Not like he analyzed like what he can do and like can see his abilities like some kind of computer. I took that translation as like he knows his profile, like he knows the type of head that's going inside, like the profile of the worm inside of him has taken that of like a defender and a thing of kindness because of the person that it's hosting. Of a person that is hosting.
Do you think that Kaiju number 9 knows that Kaiju number 8 is a hosted Kaiju?
Yes, that's why I said he needs the Kaiju back.
Okay. So how much do you think Kaiju number 9 knows at this point?
I'd say he knows more than we know that he knows.
Do you think he knows that the host is a Defense Force member?
Yeah.
Do you think he knows that it's Kafka?
Yeah. Absolutely.
I mean, does he know that? Does he know which human?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay, well, so I just wasn't sure how much Kaiju number 9 knows at this point.
No,
if he walked down the street, saw Kafka walking, would he be able to peg him as you're the dude who's got the?
Oh, this next attack on Kafka will be will be a surgical attack. It won't be like how they raided the base to see who they could take out. The next, we're gonna see more humanoid Kaiju possibly. And they're going to be going there to try to assassinate Kafka and get the Kaiju back. And there could be an arc where maybe like the ending of Kaiju number 8 that I foresee happening is, have you ever heard of Parasite?
Yeah, but it freaked me out so much I wasn't able to get past the point where he started meeting up with the other parasites and discussing how reproduction works.
All right. So pretty much, long story short, everything goes back to normal in the end of Parasite. That's something that I would expect, the type of ending I would expect from Kaiju number 8 is where everything kind of figures out a way to organically work itself back to how things used to be before the Kaiju. That's how I would expect Kaiju number 8 to
end. You say before the Kaiju, do you mean before any Kaiju or before the Dai Kaiju?
Before any Kaiju. Like they finally figure out how to defeat. I'm not sure that
there was a before the Kaiju in this world.
So you think Kaiju have always existed alongside humans?
Well, we know they've been there for 500 years, and right up until the mid-1950s, they existed in a state where a trained swordsman could take them out.
So, okay, so it would have to be one of two things. You'd have to find out whether or not they can coexist with the Kaiju for the rest of all time, or B, they figure out how to exterminate all Kaiju from the planet.
Or I don't think they need to exterminate. Okay, both of your ideas are solid, not contradicting you, but they only need to figure out how to get rid of the hyper-intelligent Dai Kaiju.
Well, that couldn't be said. Maybe if they have animalistic craven instincts, they would just swim to the ocean, swim to the land, evolve, and then eat whatever is closest to them. So that means there would still be a problem for the average person. Like you'd have a shark attack, you'd have a kaiju piranha attack, and your
Yeah.
4-year-old gets eaten.
And human nature is to accept a certain amount of danger because we have invasive rats that still carry the bubonic plague.
Yeah, you're right.
A certain number of people still die from the black and bubonic plagues every year. You just don't
Yeah.
hear about it because it has fallen under the category of accepted natural disaster.
Okay.
And there's earthquake. And right now, if you go into any old schoolhouse on the West Coast, there'll be these old brick buildings, and you'll walk in, there's these weird steel bars crisscrossing the inside. That's because we have earthquakes. They're just a natural disaster that we have to deal with.
Oh yeah.
And the schools, after the 94 and the 2011 earthquakes in Japan, all the schools on the West Coast said, we can never bring these buildings up to code. It'd be too expensive just to raise them and build new buildings that are up to 9-point earthquake codes. Make it so the kids won't be injured when the earthquake takes them out, and we'll rebuild them then.
Damn.
So, yeah, basically it says prioritize people not dying, and we'll deal with the consequences of the 9-pointers when it.
I think that's going to be a little bit different for Kaiju number 8.
Okay, so yeah, it might be the perspective of if you actually live in a place that has these massive disasters, you're a little more about it. But...
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like don't get me wrong, but at the same time, it's like this is like it's still on Shonen Jump, and I don't think like and like they postponed, and this is a little dark, but they postponed Fire Force coming out because of the fire that burnt down a disgruntled employee burnt down an office in Japan like 2 years ago. And yeah, and they like he killed like a bunch of people. So like writing about tsunamis and earthquakes in Japan is kind of like hard, like it's kind of like poor taste.
Yeah.
So they try to stay away from that, except like sometimes they'll try to confront it like head on, and like the ones that really confront it head on are the ones that kind of like don't really like, you know, get a lot of play until like years and years later.
Okay, here is a thought. You just thank you for pointing that out. I just had a thought. There is a theory of art that says stories are told of fantastic things to address the things that our culture does not allow us to address directly.
Exactly.
For instance, the myth of vampires came from during the feudal era. You had a certain number, some lords actually did what the society expected of them, took care of the land and managed the land so that it produced the most food possible so the peasants didn't die. But the ones that didn't were considered parasites that fed off of the work of the peasants and produced nothing in return. And because the culture did not allow criticism of this, the legend of vampires was born. Because people wanted to complain and tell their stories, but if they can't, you dress it up in mythology. So maybe Kaiju number 8 is dressing up in modern mythology the things that the stories that the culture does not allow them to tell. Because, you know, they are rated like Richter scales and they are pretty much treated like natural disasters.
Yeah.
Huh. Interesting.
It's a good way to look at things.
Okay, so here's kind of another question I kind of wanted to throw at you. When Mina was talking to Kafka in the truck on the way to turn him over to the base, she says that no one in the 3rd Division considers him a kaiju threat, which makes sense. They've lived in close contact with him for months. They know who Kafka is. Kafka's a really, really nice guy, the kind of guy that people want to like and do like. But you don't just erase those visceral fears.
Yeah.
That
oh
happen.
yeah, there's definitely going to be people that are
clearly he's going to have to deal with that with the people who don't know him, the rest of
Yeah.
the divisions. How do you see the writer addressing just those natural fears and uneasiness, the inevitable sense of betrayal that people will have from being lied to, even if they 100% understand why he lied? I think we're going to get a lot of this through the perspective of Vice Captain Hoshina, but there's so many other characters that he's interacted with. Manasseh.
I think the main person that you got to look out for is the guy who's like he's kind of coming off as Esau's successor, the guy who was like,
well,
he had
yeah,
that
but
massive
I
weapon.
kind of see him as still as an outsider. He's not Division 3. I mean, within Division 3,
I would say Division 3, it's gonna have like the ones that are like distant from him to begin with. Might be like I would imagine Izumo and Aoi, and it would probably be the ones that are like kind of like on the outs with Kafka, and then you'd have Furuhashi who's on the fence, and then on the opposite side you'd have Kikoru and Reno. So like you would have two people that like are kind of like, yo, dude, this guy is a kaiju. What are you doing? And then you'd have Reno and Kikoru like, look, you can buddy up with them, Furuhashi, but you're not going to get anywhere. Kafka's going to be the one that helps us get to a certain place. That's why I like Furuhashi's character, because he's like the comic relief of the rookies.
Yeah.
And he'll be he's like, I don't want to say like the outsider that's experienced what Kafka can do, but he was saved by Kafka as well. So
Yeah.
like he has a camaraderie with the two other guys, but when it came down to being saved because he was about to be killed, the person that saved his life was Kafka. So I would imagine that like they could split the rookies and then have one person be like the uncertain one, but he's like yeah, and like at first is like, yeah, we don't fuck with Kafka anymore. Sorry, excuse me. We don't mess with Kafka anymore. And then eventually be like, you know, he saved my life. He did this for me. He did, you know, like without him, I'm not here anymore. So I feel like eventually, you know, you'll have the defense force will have to be brought back over to Kafka's side.
Okay, so kind of one thing, you just kind of made me think of it. It's not really like a plot point or anything earth-shattering, but when storytelling, reconciliation, it has, as a creator, it's always been considered the cheap thing to make the easy way and the less satisfying way to make the reconciliation based on one dramatic moment of self-sacrifice, like traditionally as shown by saving someone's life. And it's always been considered the more mature, more ultimately satisfying and realistic way to make the reconciliation due to the continuous small acts of courtesy and self-sacrifice that actually ultimately do work on people's relationships and emotions. And I really think, given how the creator has written the relationships in the third division and how they've written Kafka as just the guy who's always there, always willing to help, no matter how mundane the act of help is. So I totally get what you're saying, and I agree with you. I think it's going to be more, we know Kafka. We know him because he's been with us in the dirt and the grime. I think it's going to be more focused on those little moments of sitting together in the back of the truck on the way to the mission, after the mission. Do you kind of get what I'm saying here?
Yeah. I totally get what you mean.
Yeah. Less one giant moment of he saved my life, and more,
yeah,
we know Kafka. We've seen Kafka in his down moments, in his worst moments, when he's dirty and tired and exhausted. We know how he reacts. We know who he is.
Yeah.
So just kind of on a completely different side note, I actually caught up with My Hero Academia recently because I really, really wanted to watch your Vigilantes videos.
Oh, yeah? Well,
But
it's
I was like, I
kind of,
knew instinctively that there were going to be My Hero Academia spoilers in the Vigilantes
yeah.
videos, and I had like 170 chapters to catch up on for My Hero Academia.
I'm one of those. I've always told people about that. Like, my channel is very like niche because you need to be up on My Hero Academia to understand what I talk about in Vigilantes most of the time, which I can totally understand is confusing.
Yeah, but see, I was really I am really into both of them, but I
Uh-huh.
was more caught up on Vigilantes, just probably because there's less of it, so it's easier to stay caught up on.
Yeah, it's not so much of it. There's what, 318 chapters now of My Hero
Yeah,
Academia, so it's
yeah, and
literally
I'd
half. Like,
actually gone through kind of a medically depressive state just as it started to get into where it really focused on the motivations
there you
of
go.
the League of Villains,
That's
and
what
like I can't deal with this right now. That's
oh
too well written. And so I had to stop reading it for several months, and then when I got better, I forgot to go back. I'm like, dang it, I gotta get through that now.
yeah. Look, I always like manga because I feel like manga helps my mental state as well. I feel like it's one of those things I can lose myself inside of a little while and forget about the stresses of life.
Yeah, it showed me I had a really interesting perspective though on it because I went back and I burned through well over 100 chapters of My Hero Academia, and every manga leaves me with a different flavor in my brain, if you will. And then chapter 38 came out, and I read chapter 38 of Kaiju number 8, and it was a very different experience. But actually, I realized that from my own personal perspective, even though I have years more of an emotional attachment to My Hero Academia, and it's one of the ones that I really bond, it's one of the first manga that I really bonded with my younger siblings with, and we all started it at the same time. And so we're all kind of attached to it in the same way. So I have a really strong attachment to My Hero Academia and Vigilantes. But I think Kaiju number 8 just swept them and utterly replaced them
Well,
in the number one
I
place in
wouldn't
my affections.
say for me, I wouldn't say that it completely eclipsed it, but I would say that Kaiju number 8 is just unique. Like, it's kind of like for me, like when I first read Erased. Erased was about a 29-year-old given a chance to go back to when they're 8 years old and correct a wrong that they did and change their life in the
Oh
course
yeah,
of
that
that.
that was one I had to tap out of because the
So,
emotions were too intense.
oh yeah, Erased is like, I really like the those stories that are like a mystery with sci-fi mystery, and just having like good writing beyond that is just, it helps create stories that make it become more personal for you because you understand that this person might have at one point in time felt the same type of way you felt, and that's what makes the stories good. Like, whether it's My Hero Academia or Kaiju number 8, like Kaiju number 8, I bond with people over it for the first time because we all read shonen when we were 12 and 13 years old, and now that we're over 30, we have a shonen protagonist that's 32 years old, and it's like, yeah, there's a shonen protagonist right now that's 32,
Yeah.
and it's not a 14-year-old boy, it's not a 13-year-old kid wanting to be the best. It's a guy who had a comfortable job, was doing what he was doing, was occasionally getting messed up. He was dealing with what he wanted to do in life, but it really wasn't what he wanted to do in life. He was
Yeah.
like parallel to it. And then eventually he gets the gumption to try again, and the plot takes it out of his hands and gives him the means to be great, which makes Kaiju number 8 good in that aspect. It was like, My Hero Academia is a story of being told to do that you can't do something and doing it.
Yeah.
That's what that plot is. Kaiju number 8 is a story of second chances. It's a story
Yeah.
of failing just to get back up again and give it your best. Even though you might fail again, you have to keep trying because the only way that you'll get to what you want to do is if you keep trying to do it. So that's why I feel like they're two different stories with two different themes and hold two different specific places in my heart as one of my favorite stories.
So I've had kind of this is a very technical question, and I think it might just be an art mistake. And it was a pretty obvious art mistake, and I don't see them making one. So, but I'm really dyslexic when it comes to spatial reasoning. When when Kafka defends Reno from that initial Yoju that pops up,
Uh-huh.
the Yoju breaks one of his legs, just smacks it with his hand. And then we see in the hospital it's the other it's the other leg that's been bandaged. Did you notice that?
I did not notice that. I didn't pay that close to attention. I could tell you right now that happens a lot, and I can also tell you like that's like the least of what you're noticing. There was the newest JoJo's that's coming out, which is Stone Ocean, which is the first female Joestar. She her name is Jolene. Her love interest. Yeah. Her name is Jolene.
Sorry, pause, hold that thought. I was just listening to the song Jolene. And there was a comment down below that says, no one is ever named Jolene anymore.
Well, yeah. Jolene. No, yeah, they had her name is Jolene, so everybody is like, if for the first ending song is not Jolene by Dolly Parton, we riot. It's like it has to be. So I lost my train of thought because I was Jolene.
Sorry. Anyway, you were saying that she first female protagonist, Jolene, in the context of mirroring art mistakes.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. So the very first chapter, you were introduced to this character, right? That was very much, they identified as female, very much so. Very buxom. The next chapter. Washboard abs. It's a guy. Just doesn't even address it. Doesn't even like go, oh, this person is a male now. No. This person just, next chapter, it's a guy. They're a guy. That's it. And that character becomes the love interest for Jolene. And nobody questioned it at the time because it's like, maybe it's like early 2000s when this comes out. That's how far behind JoJo is, mind you. That's how far behind the anime is from the manga. The manga is getting ready to wrap up a manga that's been out since 2010. That's every part that he's written has been like 2 to 3 years of writing, and now he's on part 8. And part 8 has been like a 10-year journey.
I remember seeing it in the library back when I just haunted the library for my manga. So
the library, you know, the library by me used to have video games in it.
Oh yeah.
And, but a lot of people didn't know that libraries have video games.
Yeah.
Go to your local libraries.
We have in the Pacific Northwest, maybe because it rains so much, we have really well developed library systems, and all the libraries all band together and form like multi-county library systems.
Pacific Northwest?
Yeah.
Oh my God, that weather. Were you in a part of this Pacific Northwest that was 110 degrees? Because that was insane that way. I'm sorry, you're gonna have to cut that out. But
no, it's fine. Yeah, I'm just trying to. I had to drive like 300 miles in that weather in a vehicle with no air conditioning.
Oh my God, Betty, what are you doing?
I have just enough Cherokee blood in me that any part of my skin that I've consistently exposed to sunlight over my lifetime doesn't burn. And so I don't think about, but I have a pretty decent farmer's tan because I always wear t-shirts. And so I was driving in my car, and when you hang your arm out the window.
Yeah.
And so from my fingertip to my elbow, I am perfectly fine. From my elbow to about halfway up my bicep, I have a very light sunburn. From halfway up my bicep to my shoulder, I have been peeling like Kaiju number 9.
Oh my God.
And it's 5 days later, it still stings. And I've been peeling in layers. Like the top layer came off, and then the under layer came off, and I'm afraid to start peeling any further because I'm getting down to where the blood vessels are.
Not good. Yeah, no, stop peeling. Yeah, you have to wait till it's good. You have to wait till the optimal time to peel.
See, I have 2 problems. I don't function well above 85 degrees. I start to melt at that point because I have various mutations that mean I don't distribute heat well throughout my body. That's why I prefer to stay in places where it's colder rather than hotter.
Okay.
But I kind of have had to force myself to, because another facet of this mutation is like I can't do air conditioning. It does something to my sinuses, gives me massive headaches. I shut down even harder in an air-conditioned room than I do in a room that's overheating.
Oh.
And so I have to very carefully manage myself during these occasional heat waves, because we had the one like back in '94, we had a bad heat wave like this. It's about every 20 years you get one of these things in this area. Very cyclic, not predictable because it's like 5 or 10 years in either direction. But yeah, so I was working at a friend's house. And so she had like one room that was air conditioned and one room that wasn't. And so I hid up in the non-air conditioned room because it was still cooler than being outside. But yeah, I was like, one of my jobs is it's like a personal assistant life coach type gig. And so I take my friend for walks. And we're like, yeah, no walking today. It's just not happening.
That's
We're
crazy. Yeah, no way. I would not go out. It's 90. It was 96 here yesterday on the East Coast, and that's just.
But yeah, and then of course I help manage my parents' farm, and so we have to take the animals into consideration. So yeah, it's like, okay, does this animal have enough shade and water? And like at one point I just took my dog down to the river and walked them in the river for a few times just to get them good and wet, because even though they're double coated, and that's usually a bad idea, they just needed the moisture today. And our main Great Pyrenees, even though it's down to 86 again, he still just kind of spends most of his day sprawled out on the ground, kicking the puppy away, saying, "Don't come near me." But yeah, we were really concerned about him because he's 14 now, 13 or 14. And he's got that massive double coat, and you don't dare shave it because that's what protects him from the solar radiation.
Okay.
And getting him wet you have to be really careful about that. So it's just plenty of shade, and make sure you can get it under the trees because they modulate the temperature. And you've got to keep the goats healthy and the chickens healthy, and the ducks are fine. They just go out into the middle of the pond.
Yeah, ducks just do duck things. That's literally what ducks do. Ducks don't care. We have Canada geese over here. They're dicks. Sorry.
Oh, they are murder chickens. Cobra chickens.
They are. They're literally like, they'll stand in front of like your place of work, and then you'll be like, move.
Yeah.
Oh, wait. Don't.
Have you ever? Do you ever watch Tier List? He does like game tier videos, but about nature.
No.
Yeah, the whole video on Canada geese. And by the way, it's Canada geese, not Canadian geese. My ornithology professor was very strict about that. He said if by the end of the class you still called them Canadian geese, you got an automatic F in the class.
I would piss him off and just be like, they're Canada gooses. I'd have been like,
this was not the
okay. This gaggle of Canada
was
goose.
Basically Shinomaya Senior. So
it's a gaggle of Canada goose. That's what I would.
Okay, so actually, I'm kind of glad you brought this up because you just reminded me of the one Kaiju number 8 topic that I forgot to bring up.
A gaggle of Canada geese.
Overheating. Okay, so the nipple joke, the nipple pee joke. So
oh my God, you think that's like the like oil getting released for overheating?
Oh yeah, 100%.
Oh, that's weird.
Okay, so here's what happened.
I don't know if I want to talk about pee.
It wasn't pee, it was sweat. It was steam release. So in the story, right before that, Kaiju number 8 had just done gigantified.
Yeah.
And Cold and Concerned, the guy I was talking about, pointed out that can't happen in real life for various reasons, but primarily because if you take a small animal and make it much larger, it will overheat and its proteins will melt. Because smaller animals produce more energy on a cellular level than larger animals.
So the bigger the animal, the hotter the blood.
Yes. So a shrew mammal, those tiny shrews that swim and catch fish, have to eat constantly because their body, all of their cells, all their mitochondria are constantly going at full blow.
That's so, why like the Arctic shrew is like the most ravenous creature ever.
Yes, It has to keep feeding its cells because the mitochondria have to keep pumping out heat to keep it alive, or it would freeze to death at room temperature.
That's why it's a cannibal, ladies and gentlemen. Okay.
Yes, and the elephant just casually strolls around eating a lot less per ounce because it has way fewer mitochondria, and each individual cell runs at a much lower temperature than the shrew because it's got its mass to insulate it.
Gotcha.
So if you take a small animal and blow it up to the size of the elephant, it would melt to a puddle of protein goo because it would overheat.
Okay.
And this is one of the science things that the creator has taken into account, because when Kaiju number 10 gigantifies, the very first thing it does is vent steam. And also it gigantifies by making, you know how it had all of those weird mouths and eyes?
Yeah.
It's showing that it's gigantifying each cell individually and not gigantifying its body and organs as a whole. So it keeps its organs miniaturized.
Okay.
And so it's now basically a bunch of Kaiju number 10s of the same size instead of one giant number 10.
So it's like,
so the author clearly takes the overheating into account. And then those beads on the turtlenecks of the uniforms, they're to vent steam for when the uniform overheats. So the creator is taking this overheating thing very, very seriously. And that nipple joke in chapter 2 was world building, very important.
So you're saying it's more or less like it was a comic relief moment, but at the same time it was also like the anatomy of a kaiju moment.
It establishes critical aspects of kaiju anatomy.
Okay.
So what you have the kaiju gigantifying, and those weird little ghost head pops up. And at first you think it's just the Kafka and the little guy getting used to the body of Kaiju number 8, which it was. But then there's the scene where it eats the bird. In order to cool down by venting steam, you actually need fluids. So the bird thing just came out of nowhere, was really weird, and then doesn't seem to have been referenced again. But in order to vent fluids, it needed fluids. And the only sources of fluids were either Reno or the bird. And it didn't eat Reno, so it ate the bird for fluids.
Yeah. Okay.
Then it shrinks down and it vents the steam. And remember how we were talking about the little guy seems to be learning from Kafka's emotions and from Reno's behavior. So it vents steam out of its nipples, and Kafka just freaks out because that's so alien to human anatomy. I mean, not really if you really understand what nipples are. They are just modified sweat glands.
They are, yeah.
So it's actually not so alien, but to someone who's never to someone who has that happen to him, I'm sure it would be traumatic. So Kafka just freaks out, drops down, wait for the defense force to come kill him. Reno freaks out. And there's one huge panel dedicated just to seeing Reno's freaked out face.
Uh-huh.
So you get the little guy getting a massive surge of negative emotion that says, don't do that. Don't vent steam like that. Now, then jump forward to the mid-30s where Kaiju number 8 is battling General Shinamaya, and to the aftermath of its fight with Kaiju number 9 and Vice Captain Hoshina. You see Kafka just staggering back to Kokoru after that. And at the time, I thought it was just exhaustion from burning so much energy. But when you add all these things together, Kaiju number 8, the little guy does seem to respond to Kafka and Reno's emotions. He got a massive negative emotional reaction.
Yeah, that's what we were talking about earlier.
Then you don't see it vent steam after combat, after exerting a massive amount of energy. Gotcha. Fighting number 9 and Hoshina, and Kafka's just exhausted and clearly just sweating buckets and overheated after that. And he's acting like, now I've experienced heat stress nearly to the point of heat stroke myself, and all the way that Kafka was acting after the battle with Vice Captain Hoshina when he was talking to Kokoru, 100% heat stress symptoms. But they're very common symptoms that can be a lot of other things too, so I didn't think about it at the time. But then there was this one scene right at the beginning of I think it was chapter 37, where Kaiju number 8 has gigantified. And it's not just he's taking over Kafka's bodies anymore. He's making himself bigger. And at no point during that fight does he vent steam from anywhere. But you see that in the image, Iso is just standing there waiting for Kaiju number 8's next move. Kaiju number 8, its mouth is gaping all the way back to its shoulders, but it's not releasing a sonic attack, and its mouth isn't open super wide. It's open, and Kaiju number 8 is hunched forward, and he's slouched there. It's between attacks, and man, he looks really, really rough Kaiju number 8 did, was my first thought. But looking back, again, that is all the symptoms of overheating. The slouched, still standing, but slouched forward, the mouth gaping, that whole kind of distressed, but not in any one specific way, body language. And yet, even after Kafka stabs himself in the chest, it doesn't vent steam. So I'm thinking that what happened was the little guy was so traumatized by Kafka and Reno's reaction to the first time it ever vented steam to cool down after gigantification that it decided not to do it anymore. And twice already, Kafka and Kaiju number 8 have had to pay the price of that, but because no one knows what to look for, they don't know that that's a bad thing in addition to the general stress being put on his body. So and we've already seen the consequences twice. So as a creator, I think the third story beat, we're going to have Kaiju number 8 refuse to vent steam at a critical moment. And they're going to have to recognize that, and that might be the impetus that forces Kafka to actually start communication with him. What do you think about that?
I mean, damn, Betty. Yeah, okay. That's like really, wow. I swear if that happens and like you just spoiled something for me. Like, but okay.
But the thing is, this creator takes things sideways, so I'm pretty sure it's going to play out in a more complicated way, both emotional-wise and story-wise. But I really do think that the Kaiju number 8 is not venting steam when it should because of the emotional trauma. Because like when you're dealing with babies and changing their diapers, you're taught early on, don't react super negatively if something goes spectacularly, horribly wrong in the diaper changing process. And it will, and it does, and I've been there. And it's really hard not to freak out because that can traumatize the kid and give them body issues.
Yeah.
And so it's like, one YouTuber I followed was talking about how he was playing upsy with his baby girl and she vomited in his mouth.
Oh.
And he started to freak out, so she started to freak out. So he had to stand there, with her vomit in his mouth and go, "Hey, it's fine, it's fine."
Oh yeah,
So
that's just gonna make it even worse fetish for them later in life.
Yeah. And so
I love vomit all of a sudden.
But anyway, that's what you made me think of when talking about overheating, because it really does look like the little guy is incredibly dependent on Kafka's mindset and emotional state to process the world around him.
Yeah.
Okay, well, it's been great talking. Do you have any final thoughts?
No, honestly, I really enjoy these talks. Talking to you and Grim is absolutely amazing, just because I really don't have anyone else to talk about Kaiju number 8 with. And the fact that you guys do is nice. It's nice to have a little bit of community going around this.
It is. It really is. Because, my siblings are all busy, and my mom is interested in storytelling, but she's tried manga, but her brain just can't process
it happens.
The different art style.
Some people, a lot of my friends are avid comic book readers, but they won't read manga because they don't like what manga is. But I'm just like, look, if you want to know what the actual person, like the person that is making it, how they draw it, you should read it, just so you know.
Yeah.
But
my mom will actually occasionally get a manga and read it just to like exercise her brain because it's so hard for her. She treats it like those brain games and riddles to keep your brain sharp.
You're her Prevagen. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, it's been fun.
Okay. So you have a great weekend.
Yeah, you too. And stay out of the heat. Make sure you stay get the. You're like me. My air conditioner's broken too.
Yeah, I'm actually spending the weekend up at the cabin in my dad's cabin at the foot of Mount Rainier.
Oh.
And it's all forest, and the property's right by a glacial river, and it never gets over 90 here.
Oh, that sounds so amazing.
And it looks like it's going to be cloudy most of the weekend, so I'm looking at temperatures between 78 and 85.
I know, but and everyone leaves you alone. Sounds like paradise.
Yep. Okay.
All right.
You have a great weekend.
All right. Catch you later, Betty.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
The book from author Betty Adams, Humans Are Weird, I Have the Data, is a humorous look at human behavior through the eyes of aliens. This book is arranged in separate reports or essays, documenting the experiences with humanity through the lens of the aliens who have to interact with them. This anthology of short stories and vignettes from alien points of view highlights some of humanity's quirks we can all relate to. Author Betty Adams captures how strange and interesting humans can really be. This is a fun collection of stories you will really get a kick out of. Humans Are Weird, I Have the Data, from author Betty Adams. Order your copy right now on Amazon.